I don't know whether I should introduce myself or not, maybe very briefly. So my name is Kazi Sohaq. I'm working Graduate School of Economics and Management as a head of the Laboratory for International and Regional Economics. I'm also serving other university in some country in Australia, Malaysia, Saudi Arabia, and particularly I'm working in IPCC team, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So I'm as a scientist in the sixth assessment in working group 3. So our report will be published very soon about the financing needs in climate projects like renewable energy and other things. So anyway, today I will be talking about global energy transitions and prospects and challenges. Uh, so I think I will try to be brief, precise, concise with my topic. So let me talk about the general outline of my presentation. So first I'll be talking about the greenhouse gas, global warming, and climate change. Then mitigation and adaptation measures and stylish facts so far the progress in terms of developing renewable energy. Then economics of energy transition, challenges, and I will try to conclude. Okay, so let me start with the very basic concept of a greenhouse gas. I'm sure all of you know about it. That's a very hot topic in sustainable development goal. And most of the country has a national determined contributions and the voluntary agreement in UN to cut down the greenhouse gases. So what is all about the greenhouse gas and why it has a very severe or adverse effect on the earth system? So as you know, the greenhouse gases is a set of gas that coming from the atmosphere that mostly the human economic activities. It is induced by human economic activities, mainly human economic activities when they're burning the carbon content energy. As you know, most of our modern economic system rely on the energy systems. Let's say transportation, industrialization, they need energy. So most of the energy is coming from the fossil fuel. Fossil fuel meaning that contains carbon. So when there is a burning of this fossil fuel or the carbon content energy, as externality, they emit carbon emission. And this emission is coming to the atmosphere, the lowest part of this world, the earth systems. And what is the nature of the carbon? It absorbs the sunlight because in the earth system, when the sunlight is coming, it should reflect or radiation go back to the sun or the space. And if this heat remains in this earth, then it creates a global warming. But if you look at the trees or the plants, they can absorb the sunlight through the photosynthesis process, and eventually they are making the energy. So we are eating the vegetables or the foods that is coming from the sunlight. That's the energy. But in contrary, carbon emissions or the greenhouse gases, when it is coming to this atmosphere, when the sun is reflecting this light, they absorb it because carbon by nature, it absorbs the sunlight. When it is absorbing sunlight, then these regions, this atmosphere is getting warmer. When it is getting warmer, that is creating a problem, meaning average temperature of the earth is going up. When it goes up, what is the side effect? If you can see that when these greenhouse gases is coming to the atmosphere, it's creating global warming, meaning average temperature of the earth system is increasing. When it increasing this temperature, then create a lot of imbalances in these earth systems. So what are the effects? The main effect is, for example, it rises the sea level. So when the sea level is rising, why the sea level is rising? Because this global warming is creating all the ice in some regions like Greenland or Antarctica. This ice blocks is melting. So when it is melting, this water is coming to the water body, and the sea level is rising. So when the sea level is rising, it cannot absorb too much water because it has a capacity. So when sea level is rising, it's creating a flash flood. So many coastal countries are suffering a lot because of this global warming and sea level rise. So they are losing their croplands, and there is some, the flash floods, natural disasters, sometimes the heavy rainfall or the droughts, or there are many kinds of problems. So it mostly the primary sectors of the economy, like agriculture, is badly affected by it. Since in many developing countries or the least developed country, the people rely on the agriculture sectors, so they are the sufferer more because of this climate change or the global warming. And you can see this is some pictures. The ice is melting, and it is a very many animals are in danger, like polar bear. Then if you see this adverse effect of the global warming, it's creating some kind of a cyclone in the wildfire. Then sometimes it's a flash floods. And the earth systems is getting hotter, so people need cooling systems. Then agriculture, of course, is a very vulnerable with the climate change. So it's a very big threat to the whole humanities. That's why the global politicians and the business corporates all want to work together to fight with the climate change. Now, if I talk about greenhouse gases, what are the sources of the greenhouse gases? There are different forms like nitrogen, methane, then carbon dioxide. So mostly 82% of greenhouse gases is just a carbon dioxide that's formed. And what are the main sources? So if you look at this statistics for 2016 from United States, you can see the transportation is contributing around 28%, then electricity generation also 28%, industry 22%, agriculture, commercial and residential. These are the economic sectors that's contributing carbon emissions and other form of greenhouse gases. So since these greenhouse gases were really a problem that's the main driver for global warming and eventually climate change, then most of the countries and even they have taken some measures to fight back with this climate change. So these measures or these strategies can be divided into the two parts. One is a mitigation approach, another one is adaptation approach. So what is the mitigation approach? Mitigation approach meaning that human-induced climate change, this driver, we have to reduce this externality. I'm sure those who study economics or A-level economics, you know the market failure or economic externalities. Like if you are driving a car, it's creating pollutions, emission, and these emissions, somebody else is harmed by your action. So that is a market failure, meaning your activities, if you are burning energy and somebody else is affected by it, who is directly not involved in these transactions or activities, but they are sufferers. So it's called negative economic externality. That's why this mitigation approach is all about to reduce the human economic, the externality, negative externality of human economic activities. So meaning that you should have such a transportation system, that transportation system is sustainable, meaning it's not creating some sort of carbon emissions. Then you need also energy efficiency. For what is energy efficiency? Meaning you will use this energy with the minimum energy, you will get maximum output. Eventually you will have less emissions. Understand? For instance, once upon a time there was a people, the transportation system or the electricity production, they rely on the coal, which is very much carbon content energy. So when it is burning the coal, it creates a lot of carbon emissions. So now the world is trying to get out of this carbon coal-based energy and more about renewable energy or the gas or the petrols. So then energy efficiency are one of the important mitigation measures. Beside of these things, the renewable energy, meaning it necessarily means that cleaner energy. For instance, solar energy or the wind energy or the hydrogen energy. So this kind of energy, what is the benefit of it? It is a clean. It does not contain any carbon. This is non-fossil fuel. That's why if you are use it, so still you can keep up the economic growth, but you can reduce this adverse effect like economic externality, but you can keep up your economic growth at the same time. So that's why this is very important. In other hand, we have adaptation. These adaptations, a set of action, that actions basically so that the people can adapt it with, meaning we cannot change this climate change, it will happen. But what we can do, we can adapt it. Let's say if there is a flash floods, so we can adapt it by like creating some kind of a dam, or if you have a better management or disaster management, or you can upgrade the infrastructures, meaning this climate change, we cannot change it, but we can adapt it by better management or something like that, or the equipments. So that is mainly the adaptation measures. Because in some cases, this global warming is very much global. So this impact is very heterogeneous or disproportionate. Let's say USA is using a lot of energy and emitting a lot of carbon emissions. Not necessarily only the US economy will suffer, but for this action, some other country also can suffer. Because, for example, the coastal area, if there is a water like ice is melting, the sea level is rising, this water is going to the low level country like Bangladesh or India, in that part, like Nepal and other countries. So those coastal countries that can be affected by the sea level rise. So that's why this impact is very disproportionate. So for anyone's actions can be a reason for others suffering. Then there is some approaches that we can say both is mitigation and adaptation. For example, education system. So eventually a better education, like when you have a good understanding about the sustainability, that can help us to adapt this risk of the climate change impact. At the same time, we also can develop some ideas or the technology that is environmental friendly, so that can reduce the bad effect of human economic activities. Then water conversions, and then complete a community system, developing community system, the new energy system, then let's say planting the urban forest. So these are the in this middle, all these measures. So we can say it's both mitigation and adaptation measures. So our topic is today energy transitions. This is mainly a mitigation measures. So you can see this is the energy, renewable energy productions that is belong to mitigation approach. So we will be talking about these energy transitions, the prospects, and what are the challenges the world is facing right now. So what do you mean by the energy transitions? So energy transitions meaning that in the traditional energy system mostly rely on the fossil fuel or carbon content energy, let's say coal, gas, or petrol, diesel. So these are the carbon content energy. So we can replace with the wind energy, solar energy, wind turbines, and biomass, biodiesel, biofuels. hydrogen, and many types. Also sometimes the nuclear, but nuclear is entirely not renewable energy since it requires uranium, but it's safe. Though in some countries like Germany, they pose some kind of a threats because since it is nuclear, but in general, if you are producing nuclear energy, that is clean. So in global, the energy system should move towards more clean energy. That is the energy transitions. So if you now we can talk about what do you understand energy transition. It refers the change from the fossil fuel based system to renewable energy source like wind, solar, and also there is storage systems like lithium battery. Okay, so it also entails the technical and political, economic, institutional, and social change, as well as a large scale shift in this modes of production, business sector, and labor markets. So why energy transition? Because we need to mainly decouple the adverse effect of economic growth from this carbon content energy, mainly the greenhouse gases. We need a different energy system, so meaning that we still economic growth will take place, but it will not be harmful for the environment. So now from these statistics, it is just a kind of a project, not projection, this is actual figures. If you can see from these figures, the share of renewable energy in the total, the global energy systems. So this blue line, it shows the total renewable energy production out of total energy mix. So you can see it is increasing with a linear trend. So approximately 12% in globally. But in this 12%, actually, there is a lot of heterogeneity in terms of this production from country to country. Not many countries are producing it. Some countries are producing and some countries don't care about it, or they are not fully capable to do it. So I will talk about all this challenge in my upcoming slides. So if you can see now, more or less, it is around 14%, which is not enough. So if you look at this, most of the countries, those who are playing actively with energy transitions, so mainly it is some of the OECD countries like Sweden, Norway, Denmark, Switzerland, Austria, Finland, then United Kingdom, New Zealand, France, Iceland, Netherlands, Latvia, Uruguay, Ireland, Lithuania, Estonia, Spain, Germany, Portugal, and Belgium. And because they increase a significant portions of their energy system from the renewable energy sources. That's a very good news. But in other hands, if you look at these many developing countries, they are the least in terms of producing renewable energy. So you can see this list of these countries. So they still rely on mainly the fossil fuel based energy systems. So what is the main problem here? The status facts like progress so far. So increasing cumulative global EV, meaning electronic vehicles, and plug-in sales from 0.5 million to 10 million, it is still required. So the energy intensity fell from 5.4 to 4.6. Then increase in global investment from 250 billion 2010 to 500 billion in 2020. And the number of people without electricity fell from 1.2 billion to 770 million. So that's really some progress, but still we need a lot of renewable energy production globally to fight with the climate change. Now, if you look at the main challenges of producing renewable energy, we can go back to the theoretical discussion or theoretical underpinning. And there is a famous theory, it's called environmental Kuznets curves. So in this environmental Kuznets curves is talking about the three stages of the development of any countries. So initially, when a country think about economic development, they think about only growth. So doesn't matter the quality of the growth, because every political government have a much more important mandate to fulfill for their people. Understand? Because for example, per capita income. So people need a good food, good housing. They need a good lot of money. So these are the first priority. So when initial stage of the economy, they care about economic growth rather than the environment. So they don't care what type of energy they are using it, whether it is environment friendly or not. So that is a pre-industrial economy mostly rely on the natural resources. So at this stage, when economic growth is taking place, mainly environmental degradation also going up significantly. Then there is a threshold point. This is the threshold point or the turning point. When economy achieve this growth after this threshold, they care about the quality of economic growth, meaning they will produce goods and services, but its externality, the negative effect should be minimized. Like European Union and OECD countries, now they care about the environment because they can afford it for better environment, but sacrificing some economic growth. But in many developing countries or emerging countries, they still care about economic growth because that is associated with the standard of living of the people. So whether they should focus on the quality of growth or absolute economic growth, that's the biggest dilemma, or it's a paradox, economics paradox. So whether they care about the environment or the economic growth, because in some cases for here, if you want to improve your environmental health, in that case you might need to sacrifice economic growth. So whether this developing country or the emerging country are ready for this sacrifice or not. So that's a big question, because if you want to change your energy systems of a country, let's say your technology much rely on the fossil fuel, but overnight you need a massive technological change to invest in the renewable energy. Now you have a limited resources. Many developing countries have a limited resources. So what they are going to do, whether they will change this energy system or they care about economic growth. So that's the big question. Still the world is fighting for it, meaning in this climate change is need a global cooperation. Many developing country or less developed country, when they cannot change these energy systems, still they are following the fossil fuel. They need a help from the wealthy country to produce renewable energy, because renewable energy need a lot of investment, and also you need some other kind of a minerals. I'll come to this point. So main challenge of producing renewable energy, the financial barriers. These financial barriers, the global renewable energy investment has risen from 6 billion to 311 billion per year during last decade, but still it is not sufficient. The International Panel on Climate Change estimates that annual investment in renewable energy and efficiency must grow by 6 by 2050 to keep global temperature from this rising more than 1.5 degrees Celsius. So International Energy Agency also indicate that the present investment pattern will not result in a big enough reallocation of capital to realize the energy transitions. A key question whether or not the national and international organization are cooperating. So meaning, as I said, many developing countries, they cannot afford to produce renewable energy because they have other priority, since they have a limited funds. So that's why international cooperation is very urgent. and the governance policies. So what it is needed for instance, if you want to produce, if any country want to produce renewable energy like a wind, now to produce the wind turbine, you need a lot of minerals. For instance, you need copper, you need a storage system, lithium batteries, then you need nickel and aluminum and different type of minerals. So whether this country having this mineral or not, they can afford it or not. But if you look at this mineral market, it is also concentrated in a number of countries. Let's say, and most of the nickels you can find in Chile, then Russia or Australia or Indonesia. So it is concentrated among the few countries. And last couple of years, the price of these minerals also increasing. So it's become a more costly for many countries to produce renewable energy. And many, like a winter-based country, for example, Russia, during the winter, there is no good sunlight. So solar panel, whether it will work or not, whether the sunlight is enough to produce electricity or not, that's also big questions. Meaning this renewable energy also rely on in many types of natural things like sunlight or the wind and other things. So that's also a big challenge. And apart from these minerals and investment, also you need the labor, skilled labor, those who can handle it. So in many developing countries, the lack of these skills to handle it. Also, importantly, the energy storage system like the lithium-ion battery, it's also very costly. Only the few countries like a China, let's say, is producing these things. So how other country can cooperate, that's a big question. It's also, of course, need an international consensus to work together to move to zero carbon target. So investment and capital has improved significantly over last decade, aided by improvement in credit access and investment independence. But still you need a market solution. So not only the government alone can derive some policies and to implement, rather it should have a co-benefit, meaning there should be some business model. That business model is making profit and economically viable at the same time that is eco-friendly. So that sort of business environment should be created, but we see this development is very disproportionate because some developed countries they have a good SME, small medium enterprises with very eco-friendly, while still developed country is lacking of it. So that's why the intellectual property rights can be another barrier to, because these technological innovations also should be very homogeneous across the globe. Because, for example, when it is developed in the high income country, then because of this intellectual property rights, then this technology cannot be diffused or penetrate to many developing countries. So that's a barrier. I said about this technological progress. So we need a more business model to work together. So these are the main challenge, and sometimes also there is some political challenges as well beside the market challenge. For instance, when there is a political change in some countries, so they change the energy or the environmental policies significantly. For instance, last time when Donald Trump was in power, so he just eliminated all the agreement, Paris Agreement, his pledge to produce the renewable energy. So this kind of a policy uncertainty also creates some kind of a problems that's very detrimental with the global energy production systems. Insufficient investment. So then if it is the business sectors are going to produce it, since it is highly risky investment. They should have also proper insurance system for any kind of a loss so that they can be compensated. So in normal market scenario, this framework may not work until unless this government is playing a active role with the policy helping these small initiatives. So I think all these challenges. So based on this my slide, I can conclude a few points. For example, the energy transition has shown us a lot of promises and possibility, particularly in terms of climate change and access to cleaner energy. There has been evidence of potentiality of energy transition so far. Most countries have also increased and sustained investment, demonstrating their commitment to energy transition. Despite this enormous benefit and potential, the energy transition faces a number of challenges. So this need for the global cooperation to achieve this goal of energy transitions that have to be accessible to all the people and has to be clean. So that's all. Thank you very much for your patience and attention. If you have any question,